So we are in the 21st episode of Fun with Heroes. Okay, and last week we had that quiz. Actually, I hope you enjoyed that. Okay, so now we are back to again the storytelling. So this week we are going to cover four stories which are who were born in the last week. Okay, the current week actually, and let's see if you know some of them. Okay, you heard about them, or you at least have seen their pictures. Okay, so these are the four people we are going to cover. So do you know anyone from this? Anyone? Okay. Any idea? Okay. Do you know any one, two, three, four people out of these people? Okay.
First one is Subhash Chandra Bose.
No, no Subhash Chandra Bose. Okay.
Dr. B.R. Ambedkar.
Yes. First one is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Yes. Right. Yeah. So yeah, actually, out of these four, one belong to Gujarat, and the four other three have mainly worked in Maharashtra. So we are right now in covering those people actually, and their birthdays are pretty close. So let's start with that. Okay. So what's the first story we have? The first story we have is Kasturba Gandhi. Now you know the name Kasturba Gandhi. Okay. So you might have heard that Kasturba Gandhi was a wife of Mahatma Gandhi. Okay. But do you know about her contribution to freedom movement? Okay, we hardly know that. And uh, she was how she was responsible in making Mohandas Gandhi a Mahatma. Basically, she played a very important role in that. And another thing, okay, the Kasturba Gandhi is the name she got after marriage. What was her surname before marriage? That is also not very known. Do you know? Not really, right? Okay. So what's her story? So Kasturba Gandhi uh, was born on 11th April 1869 in Kapadia family in Porbandar. Okay, and she was Kasturba Kapadia before marriage. So she was born in Kapadia family, which was a very kind of a wealthy family of Porbandar at that time. And another interesting aspect is that when she married to Mahatma Gandhi at the age of 13, okay, that time the marriage age was pretty low actually. So both Gandhiji was also 13 years old of age, and Kasturba Gandhi also, and she is actually older than Mahatma Gandhi by 8 months. Okay, so Mahatma Gandhi was younger to her. Okay, and so the major story has started after the marriage. After the marriage, Gandhiji was struggling with his law practice. So ultimately, he went to South Africa. After some time, Kasturba Gandhi also went to South Africa in 1897, and then that is where she became a pillar of support of Gandhi's Satyagraha movement, because the Satyagraha concept ultimately started by Mahatma Gandhi in South Africa, okay, where they faced a lot of discrimination against the Asian people. So, and she was active in all those movements. So when there was a plague, okay, struck in the Indian communities in South Africa, similar to what we have right now have a COVID situation, there was a plague outbreak in South Africa at that time. So Kasturba provided support to the Indian women and detecting, identifying disease and all kind of social help she provided, and that's where she showcased her ability to win the trust of women and build a community, and that those things were very helpful once they came back to India and set up the ashram. In 1904, Kasturba Gandhi helped establish the Phoenix settlement near Durban, which is still a monument there, okay, which was one of the earliest ashram concept, okay, which was experimented by Gandhi family there. Okay, where the it was a small village setup where the residents would share everything. Okay, and it's a community service kind of thing was done. She also participated in the struggles, the protest against the British there, and arrested multiple times. And in even in jail, she was a source of strength for her fellow prisoners. Then in 1915, they came back to India, and she was actively involved in the Satyagraha movement despite her physical illness. She fell ill actually after uh, 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 delivery of her last child. So she was not keeping well, but despite that, she kept on participating in the Satyagraha movement and especially setting up the ashrams in Wardha and Sabarmati ashram and other places. She was very active in setting up those. So her gentle and dignified manners won the respect and cooperation of everyone. And whenever Gandhiji was in jail, okay, she led the protest on behalf of Gandhiji and helped out with the ashram activities. And she taught women hygiene, discipline, health, reading, writing. So bringing women to Satyagraha, she played a very important role in that. Okay. And as Gandhiji wrote in his biography, the Kasturba was his most vocal critic. Okay, any experiment that Gandhiji did was first tested on Kasturba Gandhi, and she would provide a feedback. So whatever the Satyagraha, which became very popular later on, we saw Kasturba Gandhi kind of approved those, and she okay, nurtured those things. And she was popularly known as Ba actually, as the Gandhiji was popularly called as Bapu by the leaders of the Congress and other people, and Kasturba was popularly known as Ba. And her samadhi, she died in actually Pune in Aga Khan Palace, and her samadhi is still there in Aga Khan Palace, okay, along with Mahadev Desai. So that's the story of Kasturba Gandhi we have. Okay, so this is the earlier photo, okay, when they were young, Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi, and these are their kids actually. Kasturba Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi had 4 kids, okay, 4 sons. Do you know their name? Not many knows that. So basically, they are Harilal, Manilal, Ramdas, and Devdas. So 4 kids they had. Okay, so that's the story we had of Kasturba Gandhi. The next story we have again from Maharashtra, especially connected to Pune, is of Jyotiba Phule. Okay. So earlier in January, we saw the story of Savitribai Phule. Okay, Savitribai Phule was modern India's first woman teacher. We also had a question in the quiz. Okay. Now today we'll talk about Jyotiba Phule or Jyoti Rao Govind Rao Phule. Okay, who was the husband of Savitribai Phule. Okay. And he was also a leading reformer of 18th century India. And this is the era, okay, 18th century, when there was a lot of discrimination against the backward caste, and there was a gender-based discrimination in the Indian societies. Child marriages was common. The education was very limited to certain people, and against all of this, Jyotiba Phule fought and succeeded in a lot of that. So he was born in Satara district of Maharashtra on 11th April 1827. Okay. And as a child also, he observed a lot of discrimination based on caste and gender in society. He belonged to a backward caste. Okay. So they faced a lot of discrimination. So he believed that the enlightenment of these people is only possible through education. Okay. And when he married to Savitribai Phule at a young age, okay, he took an initiative to teach his wife, and then they ultimately started India's first school for women. Okay, and that's how the Savitribai Phule became the first first woman teacher of India. Okay, then later on they opened many more schools for girls and people from the backward class, and the husband-wife duo worked on widow remarriage and worked against child marriages too. So all those social reforms they carried out. He was a prominent social reformer and thinker of the 19th century India. In 1873, he formed something called a Satya Sodak Samaj, a society of seekers of truth, to liberate the oppressed class. He also started an orphanage, okay, okay, which was a kind of a new concept at that time. Okay, it was one of the first orphanage of India. So they started orphanage, and also served as a commissioner of Pune between 1876 to 1883. And he actually had a very good relationship with the local authorities in carrying out the reforms. Okay. And especially in Pune, there is a Phule Vada, especially there are a lot of monuments dedicated to where they lived actually, the Phule family lived. And he was honored with the title of Mahatma, okay, by Vithalrao Krishnaji Wadekar on 11th May 1888 for his social reforms actually. And he has been a legend of, in the social space for India. So that's the story of Jyoti Phule. And this is the house actually, it's a renovated house where the Mahatma Phule and Savitribai Phule lived. So this is still in Pune. Okay, it's a monument right now. One can visit there. So,
अंकल यहाँ वाकड़ में वो रोड भी है ना, महात्मा फुले रोड?
yes, yes. There are a lot of actually there are roads named after Mahatma Phule, Savitribai Phule. There is a Mandai. Okay, there is a Phule Mandai is there, right? Mahatma Phule Mandai is there. So there are a lot of even the buildings are named after them. Okay, especially in Pune. Yes. The next story we have is R Khanolkar. Now, okay, before coming to that story, we know, okay, right now we are in the pandemic of Corona. We all know, right? For 1.5 years now, what we hear about Corona and the trouble that is causing. Okay, but do you know which is one of the most deadliest disease of the last century, which is still like very much dreaded upon a disease? Okay. Anyone has? Okay. So do you know what is cancer? You know cancer, right? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, cancer. So cancer is, yes, of course, it's a very deadly disease. Okay. And right now there are a lot of doctors who are specializing in cancer and who have worked on those things, cancer treatment. Uh, but that was not the case 100 years ago. Now, at that time, there was one doctor who made a significant research on cancer in India. Okay, that time the cancer in India was kind of an unknown subject. No one knew about. And there was a one doctor who made a significant research in them, and that was Dr. R Khanolkar. Okay. And he also showed the dangers of tobacco to the world. Okay. Earlier, it was not known that tobacco is related to cancer, but he is the one who actually showcased that relation. Okay. So his name is Dr. Vasant Khanolkar. Okay. So Dr. Vasant Khanolkar was born in small Konkan village on 13th April 1895. Okay. Then he went to University of London and obtained his bachelor's degree as well as MD in pathology from there. So he obtained his higher courses from London. Okay. And he became a pathologist, which is basically pathology is a subject of or study of disease. Okay, so he became a pathologist in that. He did a good amount of research and then he came back to India and joined the Grant Medical College in Mumbai as a professor of pathology. Okay. Here, of course, he did a lot of work, and as a professor, he enhanced the syllabus of medical education in India to be in sync with the international research. Okay. So he took care of the enhancing the syllabus so that it is aligned with the international standards. Now, during that time, he developed keen interest in the research in cancer and leprosy. Okay. And then he gave up that job at the Grant Medical College and took up a pivotal position as a chief pathologist at Tata Memorial Hospital in 1941. Okay. And Tata Memorial Hospital was one of the topmost hospital in India at that time. Okay. So he joined that and continued his research on cancer. So he was India's first pathologist who made major contributions in the fields of cancer research, then blood groups, leprosy, physiology of reproduction, and medical education. So not only cancer, but a lot of other topics also he made an important contribution. He was, as I mentioned, he was amongst the earliest to demonstrate the carcinogenicity of tobacco, how tobacco is dangerous, okay, and how it can cause cancer. He was one of the first to demonstrate that, okay. And because of his uh, pioneer work on cancer research in India, he was awarded the membership of the Union International Union Against Cancer, which is UICC, which was an international body. He represented India in that. He was also founder president of the Indian Association of Pathologists and Microbiologists. He was also founder director of Indian Cancer Research Center. So before him, there was hardly any cancer research in India. So he was the one who laid the foundation, okay, for the cancer research in India, set up the Indian Cancer Research Center. Okay, he was also a member of the WHO, World Health Organization panel on cancer and leprosy. Okay, and member of the United Nations Committee on the effects of atomic radiation. So after the atomic bomb trials, okay, there was an increase in the cancers. Okay, so he was part of the committee who investigated those things. Okay, so how atomic radiation is related to cancer. Okay, so a lot of research throughout his life he did that, and he published more than 100 research papers, and he wrote 3 books on cancer and leprosy, which are still considered kind of standard, okay, in those subjects. And in 1963, he was appointed as a National Professor of Medicine by the government of India. And in 1955, he was awarded Padma Bhushan, okay, which is India's third highest civilian honor. So that's the story of Dr. R Khanolkar. He is known as the father of pathology and medical research in India. Okay. So whenever now you hear about cancer, you know that there was a doctor called R Khanolkar who made an important contributions there. Okay. So that's the story of this legend. So this is the Khanolkar Shodhika. Basically, this is the cancer research department in Tata Memorial Hospital right now, which is named after now Khanolkar, Dr. Khanolkar. Okay. So that's in his memory. This was done. The last story we have, that we correctly identified, is of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar or Baba Saheb Ambedkar. Okay. Now, just now we saw the story of Jyotiba Phule, right? And I said that Jyotiba Phule was a reformer of the 18th and 19th century, okay, and worked on the oppressed caste. Okay. Now there was another legend, okay, who continued that work, okay, in 20th century. Okay. Now, the story of Baba Saheb Ambedkar is not only about how he came from a backward caste and then okay, made an important contribution, but the the kind of thing he did is kind of impossible for the one person to do, and still he did that. Like he was, imagine that one person who was the 14th child of his parents. Okay, his parents had 14th children. So he was the 14th child of his parents. He didn't get a good uh, support at school. He was denied even water by his school, okay, because of the discrimination against caste. Then became a first person to obtain a degree from his community, which is the Bahar community. He was he completed his law graduation in London in record time. The course that took normally 8 years, he completed in 3 years. Okay, became a successful lawyer, also became a successful economist, and then also drafted the Indian Constitution. So everything is done by one person, and that is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So what's his story basically? So Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar was born in the military cantonment of Mahau in Madhya Pradesh. His father was working for the British Army. So that time he was stationed in Mahau, which was a military cantonment. He was born there on 14th April 1891. And because they belonged to backward caste, he faced a lot of discrimination initially, but he was a very bright student and obtained a scholarship from the Maharaja of Baroda, the Maharaja Gaikwad, to study at the Elphinstone College in Mumbai. Okay, he studied in political science and economics from Bombay University in 1912. Then he went to USA for higher studies. Okay, he came back and then again worked for the state of Baroda. Okay, but here also, even after obtaining all the degree from the USA, he continued facing the discrimination. So and he was anyway looking to study further study in London. So he gathered money. He worked for some time. He gathered enough money and then went to London and obtained degrees in economics and law. He faced a lot of hardship there, but he managed to complete his graduation. As I mentioned, the degrees that normally took 8 years, he completed those in 3 years, and in both economics and law. Okay, and then he came back to India, and here he set up his own firms. It was a very challenging time from him, but then he worked on uniting the people from the backward caste and worked against outlawing the discrimination against untouchables. He approached the legal authorities. He became a very important legal advisor and started the legal battle for their rights. It is considered that Dr. Ambedkar was the highest educated Indian economist of all time. Okay, he not only the legal thing, okay, for which he is mostly known, but he was also an amazing economist. Okay, and a lot of earlier economic reforms were his ideas actually. Okay, so right now we know the Reserve Bank of India, right, RBI, which is the highest bank in India, which prints the currencies and manages the economy in the country. So that the idea of RBI was given by Dr. Ambedkar to the Hilton Young Commission. Okay, he was the one who kind of suggested this thing, and ultimately it was implemented some years later. And then, as we know, he was the chairman of the Constitution Drafting Committee of Independent India. So when in 1947, when it became apparent that India is going to be independent, there was a committee set up to draft the Constitution of the new India. Okay, that was the Constitution Drafting Committee, and Dr. Ambedkar was elected as the chairman of the committee. Of course, there were a lot of other honorable members in that committee from different regions, and he was the chairman of that, and that is why he is considered as the maker of the Indian Constitution. Okay. And he was an avid reader. He used to read a lot of books, even in England. Okay, he had a big collection of books, and in his home in Mumbai, okay, he had a personal library of 50,000 books, okay, which is called Rajguru, Rajgir. Okay, and it is considered as the world's largest private library. So, this is his home in Mumbai, which is a Rajguru, and this is where more than 50,000 books are there. It is now a monument converted into his memory. Okay. So that's the story of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So this week we saw the stories of 4 people. So now you know the names, right? At least you know okay, what they did. Or okay. So the first one is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. We just heard about his story. The second one is, who is the second one?
R Khanolkar.
R Khanolkar. Yes, R Khanolkar. Yes, right. Third one is Jyotiba Phule. Oh, Jyotirao Phule. And the last one is Kasturba Gandhi.